or sorry, doctors, maybe nurses, maybe police officers. But the FPA role is a little bit, I wouldn't say newer role, but we're growing, which is great, right? So um, we are in caregiving roles also, right? And as we're working with families, we listen to their trauma and we listen to those stories. And, you know, a lot of FPAs probably have a strong capacity for empathy. You probably feel for those families because of our lived experience. Which brings me to the next point. Due to FPA's lived experience, we are more likely to be able to relate to the experience of the family on a deeper level. So, you know, they might go to a doctor who has seen families in situations like their own, but in our instance, we might have been through something similar and share some of those same feelings. And so using our lived experience can enrich and strengthen the relationship between the FPA and the family. However, it is important to keep emotional boundaries. I probably don't have to tell you guys that when we're working with families, we can grow a strong relationship between ourselves and the family where we really start to deeply care about the families. And I think that's important, and it's great. But again, we just have to kind of watch those emotional boundaries so we don't become burned out or maybe get some of that vicarious trauma. And then exposure to trauma. What is that about? So FPAs who work with families who often face or are facing some kind of trauma, being exposed to that family's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and hardships can cause vicarious trauma for the FPA. Vicarious trauma is different than burnout. So burnout is mental and physical exhaustion, where vicarious trauma is caused from prolonged exposure to trauma, and this can affect one's worldview. So when we see a lot of the things that families go through, maybe it's injustices, it can kind of start changing our worldview and how we see things, right? So it's important just to keep mind of that. And this is something I learned when kind of researching this webinar, but vicarious trauma is actually recognized as a possible cause of other disorders on the DSM-5, such as PTSD and other stress-related disorders. So vicarious trauma itself isn't necessarily on the DSM-5, but it could be a cause of some of those disorders on there, which is very interesting. So what happens when we are working with families and we keep hearing these stories over and over again, different stories or what the family has been through, and we really start caring for these families. Sometimes we're put in situations where we can't find the solution ourselves, right? Where we might have to pass that on to someone, or maybe we don't have closure where we stop working with the family before we help them enough to satisfy ourselves and them. Prolonged exposure to trauma can cause an individual to feel like they're not enough. So in those situations where maybe, a family's dealing with something, but it's just out of what we can control, something we can't control, or maybe we have to pass it on to another service provider. There's times when we have to close services with families, before we're able to help them in the ways that they have asked. And that could make you feel like you're not enough, or if you're not doing enough. If FPAs cannot fix the issue quickly or at all, sorry, this in turn can cause individuals to work harder or outside of their job description. So this is just a reflection question. I want to take a moment. You can answer in the chat if you'd like. I want to know, has there ever been a time when you worked outside of your duties to help a family? And if so, how often do you do this? I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. Just kind of want you to think about it. If there's something a family is going through, maybe they need you outside of your hours you typically work. Have you gone outside of what you typically do to help families? Just think about that and how often you do it. And if you want to put an answer in the chat, you're more than welcome to do that. And I will start back up in one moment. It's important. That's the first step to kind of keeping those boundaries. So we are going to continue to go. I will start sharing my screen again. And we will have a lot of these reflection questions. Some of you can answer if you want, but more so just kind of thinking to yourself and kind of bringing about some self-awareness. Okay. So here's some reflection statements. I'm going to read them out loud. I'll pause in between. These, again, you don't have to answer, but I want you to kind of think about these and think about if you can't answer yes to these, maybe that's an area you have to work out. So kind of just, again, bringing about some self-awareness. I know when to take a break. I never push myself to a state of burnout. You don't have to answer, but is that something you can say yes to? Okay. I speak up and I share my feelings and opinions when necessary. Can you answer yes to this? I politely say no when I need to. I never say yes to situations I do not feel comfortable. I respect my time and energy. Okay. So if you did say no to any of those questions, maybe just kind of think about it. Think about if that's an area that you can work on in creating boundaries. Um, and we will start talking about how to create those healthy boundaries. So establishing healthy boundaries, it's important to understand your energy levels and only do what you can. Pushing ourselves past our limit can cause physical health issues. I want you to think about your cell phone battery. I'm sure everyone here has a cell phone, right? When your cell phone gets down to zero, it dies. It's not going to work anymore. You can't make phone calls. You can't text people. You can't do anything, right? Think about our energy as a cell phone, right? So what percentage energy are you at right now? You at 50% where you could take a nap, you could, maybe get out exercise a little bit. Are you at 0% and you're trying to push yourself past what your energy level will allow? We're not cell phones, we're a little more than cell phones, but we have energy and our energy can run out. And when our energy runs out, it's important not to push yourself past that because that's when you start seeing some of the physical health or maybe mental health where you are just burned out. Maybe you start snapping at your family or friends. You see some of those things, so it's important to kind of monitor where your energy level is, and we must decide who, when, and where we use our energy every day. Creating healthy boundaries is essential to our physical, emotional, mental health. When we establish healthy boundaries, we're creating longevity in our work, right? So as I said before, we probably, becoming an FPA, you became an FPA because you have that lived experience. You've been through something and you want to help others who have been through similar situations or maybe the same situation as your own. And if you made that choice, I would assume that you probably want to do it for as long as you can, right? So that's the longevity that I'm talking about. We want to continue doing what we're doing. We want to continue to help people. And in order to do that, we really have to put ourselves first. Um, when I was working with families, I have always used the airplane example, and you probably have heard this, where, if you're on an airplane, you always want, and, the oxygen mask comes down, you always want to help your kids first and then yourself, right? Because if you don't help yourself, or I'm sorry, you help yourself first and then your children, because if you don't help yourself first and you pass out, you're not gonna be able to help anyone, right? And I always said that to families, and I heard actually, I was listening to a webinar one time and I heard someone say, let's think about this realistically. If we're actually on a plane and you have your children or family or loved one with you and those masks come down, are you really going to put it on yourself first? Or are you going to take care of your kids first or your family first? And I thought thought about that, and if I was to be honest, and if I was on a plane and the oxygen mask comes down, I would definitely take care of my kids first. There was nothing to stop me, even though I have said that 1,000 times, right? And so I think we can relate that to our work, because everyone preaches self-care and says, you have to take care of yourself first, but we do care about the families we work with. Are we actually putting ourselves first? And that's, again, it's important to do so we can keep our health, our mental health, our physical health, and keep doing what we love to do. Keeping healthy boundaries is actually a great act of self-love. I'll pause for a minute. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions, comments? Anyone relate? You can put them in the chat if you want to. TJ says that he would take care of me first, so he's able to do more for his children. So I need to be more conscious in order to do so. Yeah. I would like to say that I would try to take care of me first, but I probably wouldn't. So just something to think about with our families.
This is true. You can't show up for your best self if you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
You can't provide for families showing up as your best if you're burnt out or you're tired.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on and we'll talk about some types of boundaries. So physical boundaries, this is regarding your body, physical touch and your personal space. So we work with families, and everyone has not everyone has the same comfort when it comes to physical space and touch. Some cultures speak with their hands, or some people might actually place their hands on you when they're talking. Maybe they put their hand on your shoulder when you're talking, or maybe even your knee if you're sitting on the couch or something. They might put their hands on you. And then my father-in-law is Italian, and the very first time I ever met him, he came up to me, he kissed me on the face. And I was like, whoa, because it just wasn't what I was used to, right? So different people have different comfort levels, and it's important to speak what your comfort level is. Some people prefer standing further away when they're talking to you. Some people like to stand really close to you when they're talking to you. So maybe you're in a home and somebody is like almost in your face talking to you. Um, it's important to make others around you aware of your physical boundaries. That's something that you deserve to have. You deserve to have physical boundaries, and there is a polite way to do it. So just making sure that you keep those physical boundaries, and pointing out what your comfort level is. The next is emotional boundaries. This is the right to your own feelings. So you have the right to your own feelings. It's important that we process the way we feel in a healthy way. If you met with a family and it caused you to feel happy, angry, sad, confused, or more, it's important to take the time to process those feelings. I don't. I know I've left houses before and cried and because of what the family was going through. And it's just, it's important that, we acknowledge those feelings. We have a right to those feelings, but making sure that we do the work and work our way through those feelings, whether it's talking to a supervisor during supervision or, taking a walk or whatever coping skills help you to work through those emotions. But you do have a right to them, and it's important to work through those. The next is mental boundaries. This is right to have your own thoughts and opinions. So you have the right to your own opinions and thoughts. We have different opinions from the families we work with, but we can keep our thoughts and opinions in a healthy way. It's important to note to make sure you speak to your supervisor if you don't feel comfortable or you cannot separate yourself from your opinion. I won't get into it, but this was we just went through an election, and our families may differ in opinion than we are. Maybe our families have a very strong opinion, and it might be different than ours, and that's okay. It's okay to have a different opinion, but it's important to make sure that you're comfortable, and that you can keep your opinion. if it's different from the families in a healthy way. And, if the family does have a strong opinion and it does make you uncomfortable, either have that conversation with the family or seek support for that, from your supervisor and figure out how to work through that. But we do have a right to our thoughts and opinions. Anyone have any comments on that one? That one is a little, I think we probably have seen that a little bit more.
I just want to
Uh,
say, I think that it's so important if a family makes you, for whatever reason, you don't feel safe to talk to your supervisor and make a plan around that. Because we all have that right to feel safe, no matter where we are or what we're doing.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think that sometimes that's kind of where FPAs or anyone providing services might put themselves to the side, right? Is, oh, well, that made me feel uncomfortable, but maybe they're just having a bad day or they work through it, right? Um, it's important that if you have those feelings, if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel safe, it's important to mention that, you know. You do come first. As much as we care about the families, as much as we want to help the families, um we want to be our best selves, and if we don't feel comfortable, then we might not be able to be our best selves. And these are difficult conversations to have sometimes, but it is important to have those conversations and make sure you are safe, you are comfortable. um the next one is time boundaries. So this includes being able to determine where and how you spend your time. I think it's important. Different agencies work differently, but if you have a set schedule, I think it's important not to go outside of that set schedule as much as possible. If your time does fluctuate, I would kind of, try to have an agreement with your supervisor, of what times you will work. If there's times that, you absolutely cannot work, I would make those clear. Um, Time boundaries is one of those ones that can easily, your boundary can be pushed a little bit, especially if you get on the phone with a family, or maybe you are done at 5 and you have something with your family, a dinner or sports afterwards, and this family calls you with an emergency. You might talk to them past that time, that you're normally done with work, or you might even say, I'll be at a dinner in a minute, I have to deal with this. It's important to keep those time boundaries as much as possible. We do want to serve our families, so saying like, hey, I understand this is important. Maybe it's something you can't help them with. You can point them in the right direction of someone who can help them, or just asking them, like, I know this is important. Is this something we can talk about tomorrow morning? But really making sure you honor your time boundaries. It can easily be blurred. I think we've all blurred it before. I know I have. Christy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I think that it's important. One of the things that I think is so important is turning off everything when you're done working. So your phone, your computer, don't check it.
Mhm.
There's backup somewhere. Um, but the other thing too, when I think of time boundaries, is using PTO and actually being on PTO when you're using your PTO. I think that
Yeah.
that goes so far in helping to prevent burnout.
Yeah, definitely using that PTO and going on vacation and taking a vacation. Have you ever,
Mhm.
don't answer this, but have you ever taken a vacation and brought your work phone with you? Because you shouldn't. If you're on vacation, you should be on vacation. And it's okay. And I think that I know I sometimes have felt guilty, and we probably think about our families and worry about our families, especially if they're going through something. And again, these are difficult conversations to have. It's difficult to think about. Maybe you're thinking like, I'm abandoning this family, but we have to remember that we need to preserve our energy. We need to make sure that we can keep doing this job. And by doing these things, it's going to allow us to be our best self and be able to continue doing what we love doing. Okay, material boundaries. This is another one that I think can very easily be blurred, right? This is the right to protect your physical possessions as you choose. Again, I want to mention that every agency is different, so always refer back to your agency on, the rules, the protocol for different things. But um, y- um, Maybe it's family's having a bad day, so you bring them a coffee, right? And then they want you to bring them a coffee every single visit. That can easily be blurred, and you're like, I don't want to spend $5 a week on this family. It adds up quick, especially if you're working with 20 other families. So just kind of remembering that, I know we all want to provide the best for our families. And what's a coffee, if they're having a bad day, but just kind of keeping that in mind. Maybe you're asked to pick something up for a family off your own dime, off your, with your own money, in other words. Just kind of keep in mind of those material boundaries. It's very easy to do, especially when we see families in need and families who are having bad day. Just making sure, if I buy something for family, can I be reimbursed? We do work with a lot of families, and it can add up pretty quick. Material boundaries also includes your vehicle if you have one. Um, are you comfortable transporting the families you work with? What does that look like? Just kind of talking to your supervisor, figuring out your agency, and kind of seeing where you feel comfortable, and making sure you have that conversation. If you don't feel comfortable having maybe a child or family in your car, just making sure that's known and talking to your supervisor about it. And then energetic boundaries. So how are you managing your energy? Think about that cell phone. You're at 100% when you wake up. Hopefully you're at 100% when you wake up. Where are you as you go through the day? Is there some families that are more draining than others because they have a lot more going on? Just kind of make sure you think about your schedule. If there's a family that takes a lot more of your energy, that's okay. But if you have two or three of those families, don't schedule them all on the same day, right? Um, so, are you working with a family more than you're supposed to? So say, we don't want to spend 20 hours a week with one family. As much as we care about our families, we want to make sure we preserve our energy. And then I want to talk about boundaries within the FPA work and how to say no in a polite way. So physical boundaries, we talked about different people have different comfort level regarding physical touch. An example of this would be I am not comfortable with that type of touch. If you would like to think of any other examples, you can put those in the chat, or another way you would express this, or maybe if you had an example, something like this happen to you, how do you express those physical boundaries? The next is emotional boundaries. We talked about that we all have a right to our feelings without them being criticized or invalidated. So maybe there's something that's, hard for you to talk about, whether it's with a family, whether it's with a coworker. You can say, I'm sorry, I'm really not comfortable discussing this right now. If it's something you're not comfortable with, maybe you can say, hey, can we talk about this tomorrow? Or can I give you a call on this tomorrow? Can I follow up with you would be a good one. And then mental boundaries, we talked about that we're able to hear the opinions of that are different from our own and not waver. So you can say something like, I hear you and I respect your opinion. We can respect other people's opinions and we don't have to agree with them. Time boundaries. We have a right to how we use our time. I'm sorry, but our time is up for today. I would love to discuss this with you more the next time we meet. So say you're scheduled with a family for an hour, and if they're like me, I talk a lot. So, the hour might be done and you have, 20 minutes to get to your next family. And this family just wants to continue talking. You have a great relationship. And if you spend more time with this family, it might increase your stress level because now you spend extra 10 minutes with them, but you only have 10 minutes to get to the next family, and traffic is horrendous today. So, those are all things that could happen, obviously. Just making sure we're keeping our time, and we can do it in a polite way. Material boundaries. Everyone has a right to protect their physical possessions. I'm sorry, but I don't feel comfortable providing rides with my car. Something you could say, and again, just check with your agency, see, your agency's point of view on this. That's just one example. If you have a different example you'd like to share, you're more than welcome to. Energetic boundaries. So we have a right to use our energy the way we see fit. So I'm sorry I'm unable to help you with that because I have a lot on my plate right now. Maybe something you would say to a coworker or, to a family. I'm sorry I'm not able to work on this right now, but let's schedule a time in the next few days when we can continue to talk about this and work on this together. I want to stop for just a minute. It was a lot of information. I'd like to start talking about SMART goals, um, and how those work with our family. Um, Somebody had said making copies for families. That's great. I'm looking at the comments. Um, Genevieve said, I struggle with that in time because I feel like families will need me. My old supervisor always tried expressing the importance of taking time. Great. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on any of the stuff we covered so far before we move on? Oh, Neil had said texting can be a boundary issue. Right. I respond to text messages a lot more than I would respond to a phone call. Yeah. Hopefully, this is kind of resonating with people and we can um, make sure we're respecting ourselves and taking care of ourselves. If nobody has any comments, I will continue to share. Okay, some of us might already be using SMART goals when we do family treatment plans. But you can think about this SMART goals in a different sense. If you're not using SMART goals, I'll kind of go through it. SMART goals, the S stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Sorry, that's what it stands for. So the first step to creating boundaries is to be self-aware of what your boundaries are. So we want to make sure that we know what our boundaries are. Do you know what your boundaries are? Have you ever really thought about that and got into that? You can use SMART goals to establish and understand your own boundaries. Once you understand what is important to you and you've established your boundaries, make them known to those around you. So letting your coworkers know, letting your families know. I think it's important on, one of the first visits to kind of letting families know what we can and cannot do. The family peer advocate role is different than other service providing roles. So just letting them know where those lines are and what you can and cannot do. And I think that helps to create a better relationship with the family once they know what you're capable of. So, how do we write a SMART goal? So specific, we want to make sure a goal has a desired outcome, pointing out what will be accomplished and how. I think before we get too much into this, I think it's important if you're struggling with the boundary, this is a tool you can use to kind of work your way through that. Measurable, your goal should have certain criteria so you can measure the progress. Attainable, setting goals into smaller bite-sized chunks increases the likelihood that it can be obtained. I used to hear how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, and it's kind of the same thing, right? We do family for advocates do big things, so just kind of taking one step at a time, small goals. Relevant, your goal should align with your overall objective. It should be realistic. So making sure it's something you can do. Time bound, give yourself a deadline. This may not mean all of your work is done, but allows you to measure the progress and reevaluate. Okay, so let's practice. Does anyone have a boundary or goal that they might want to work on? Shakira said it's kind of hard getting over that guilt feeling of not being there when taking time for yourself. Yeah, it is. Definitely. I'll read TJ's. He says, knowing that it's difficult is a first step. We then have to take 5 minutes. I would suggest in your mind mapping out a perfect world, what it would look like. Once clear, review what's holding you back. We're holding you back now, and then start taking 5 minutes or time. Time in the shower can be the me time. And then I statements, push a frequency you desire. Examples are happy, I'm healthy, I have time, I am healed, I am healing, I am successful. Small steps, one day at a time. Take note of date and time completed. Continue to revisit to see where you are and assess what you can do, what you want to do, and what you need more time on. Thank you so much, TJ. He always has a way with words.
Anytime.
So I'm actually going to share the goals that I came up with. And you guys, if you love it or hate it, you can tell me. Okay, so let's think about your personal time. This is one we said the boundary can be blurred on a little bit, right? Um, and we can work together to talk about this if you want. So here is the goal. I will respect my time by making sure I end my workday when I'm supposed to. I'll take my lunch break and my scheduled days off, like Christy had said. I will self-check 2 times a week for the next month. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that that's doable?
It's definitely doable. I like it. It's realistic. You're not putting too much, stress on yourself, and it's definitely attainable.
Yeah.
Just have to keep doing those self checks. Don't forget
Yeah.
about those. Maybe set it on your phone or something to make sure you're doing that throughout the week.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie. What about lunch breaks? How many people have skipped their lunch breaks before? If you're working through something?
Yes and no. So I usually either take a walk or eat lunch, and my lunch is 12 to 1. So even if I'm not eating, I try to move away from the computer, kind of move away from everything and come back, even if it doesn't necessarily have to be lunch, but just
Yeah.
moving away from work and
Yeah.
taking your breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And scheduling days off. Hopefully we're scheduling days off. Um, this goal is specific. It is well defined, measurable. This goal can be tracked. We're going to be doing it 2 times a week for a month. Um, you can kind of track how much time you're spending on yourselves. And once we get into the habit of doing this, you don't have to be so specific as writing it down, right? Is if we're checking on ourselves 2 or 3 times a week at the minimum, um, making that a regular practice, we don't have to be so specific as this. This is just something to, if you're struggling or, there's something specific you want to work on. Attainable, this goal can be done. The individual can write it into their schedule. So, writing, lunch from 12 to 1. And even if that's not eating lunch, maybe you are going to take a walk. Putting that on your schedule and making others aware of that. And writing your end time into your schedule. This goal is relevant. It's pertinent to the individual's mental health. So taking that time off, taking time for vacation, scheduling days off. When I think of scheduling days off, I also think of making sure, you're going to your doctor and your dentist or whatever appointments you might have, making sure those are getting done too. Especially if you still have children in the home who have appointments. A lot of times parents might take time off to make sure their kids get to their appointments, but neglect themselves, right? So just making sure you schedule days off for you. And if it's not appointments, maybe it's just a relax day where you take a nap. It is important to take those days off. And the last thing is time-based. There's an end. So we're going to be finishing this in a month. They have an end of workday as well as a time to check in with themselves. So at the end of the month, you can check in and maybe you didn't take your lunch break as much as you would like to, or maybe you didn't schedule any days off at the end of the month. You can kind of rewrite it, go back and try again. So it does give you a time frame. We're going to move on from that. So now we can look at, I want to start talking a little bit about empathy and empathy without boundaries. So again, you don't have to answer, but maybe give yourself a little point if you have done this before. I have to take this phone call right now. Has anyone felt like that before where You know that this person who's calling is probably have something important. You have to take that phone call right now, no matter what you're doing. I have to fix their problem. Have you ever worked with a family and maybe they're just pulling on your heartstrings and you just have it that what they're going through, you have to fix it for them. I have to invest time in this family no matter what. So maybe you do have a dinner with a family at the with your own family, but this family is really going through something hard, and you think to yourself, well, dinner can wait half an hour. I have to spend time with this family. Or maybe you have a child who's going to sports and you call your significant other or you call a friend and say, hey, can you bring them today? I have to deal with something. While that can be okay, you don't want to make it into a regular thing. So you have to invest in this family no matter what. You have to be careful of that. That's empathy without boundaries. And I am so worried I will not be able to sleep at night. I think we've probably all been there, whether it's we don't sleep at night or whether you turn your car off or you walk in your door and that family is still on your mind and they're still weighing heavy on you. I think we've all been there. And it's hard not to do with some of the things we've seen and some of the things our families go through. It's important. It's hard not to think about those families sometimes. So it's something we might have to consciously do. Christy, did you want to add?
Yeah, I was just thinking about I first of all, and I put in the chat, I really think that it's important that everybody actually does this activity. I was really impressed like when Ashley took the SMART goals and applied it to ourselves. But if you have been working with a family maybe and been providing, right, this empathy without boundaries, talking to your supervisor, identifying what their natural supports are or what your agency offers for crises. Typically it's not us, right? And then you can have a conversation with the family. I know I used to answer the phone, but I'm really trying to take care of myself too. You're modeling for them. And then saying, after whatever time, I'm not going to answer the phone anymore. These are the resources that you can use. And I'll be sure to get back to you the next day. And just sort of do a reset if you need to.
Yeah. Thanks, Christy, for sharing that. As I was reading through my webinar and kind of looking at it, some of these almost seem offensive, right? Like I felt like maybe I'm neglecting, maybe is this the right thing to say? Are we neglecting families? Sometimes it feels that way when we put ourselves first. I think what Christy said is making sure there's a plan in place. Is there someone they call in case of an emergency? Making sure the family has those resources they need, or, letting your supervisor know. I normally answer the call, but I need some time for me right now. It is okay, and these are difficult conversations, but I think it's stuff that really needs to happen for ourselves to make sure we're not getting burned out and making sure we're not going through our own traumas, right? So what does empathy with boundaries look like? So hopefully you can, hopefully you can say you've done this before. So you see a family calling, you're in the middle of something, I will return their call as soon as I can. We still care about that family. We're still going to return the call and we're probably going to do everything we can to help them, but we're going to return that call when we can return that call, right? This is a big one. That is not mine to fix. However, I can hold space for them. Remember, you might have heard before, we are not supposed to be superheroes. Maybe someone is telling you all this stuff that's on their mind, not to have you fix it, but just to have someone to listen to them, right? So we can hold space for people without having to fix all their problems. That's still empathy. We're holding that space. We're still being there for the family, maybe referring them to to somebody who can help them with that more so than you. Julie, did you have to add or have something to add?
Yes. So, this is what I always say. We can't fix families. We can
Hmm.
support, we can help guide, we can refer out, but it is not our jobs to fix families.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. I will prioritize myself and my commitments first. So do what are your commitments? It looks different for everybody. For me, I have a family, I have 4 kids at home. Um, and that's my commitment, myself. And it's hard. It's really hard to do because I'm sure you all can relate. We really care about these families. We want the best for them. We don't want them to suffer. We don't want them to go through what they're going through. We are helpers. That's why we're here. Everyone who became a family peer advocate had to have lived experience. So you're here to help people. That's obvious. And we really want to help people and we want to continue to help people. But to do that, we have to prioritize ourselves first. And then I will not allow this worry to consume me. So you walk in the door and that family is still on your mind. What do we do to help ourselves to relax? What coping skills do you have to kind of get that off your mind and save it for tomorrow? I think that's important. I will not allow this worry to consume me. Consume me. We can worry about the families, but don't let it take over every aspect. And self-awareness. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about next. Self-awareness. What keeps us from reaching self-awareness? The truth hurts. Sometimes it is difficult to hear about the truth about ourselves, whether it's positive or negative. Furthermore, internal excessive self-monitoring can lead us to become anxious or have self-doubt. So if we're constantly questioning ourselves, did I do enough? Was I enough? We can have self-doubt, right? And hearing having those supervisions with your supervisor, sometimes that can be hard if maybe you did do something that you weren't supposed to, or maybe it is positive. Have you ever seen somebody who received an award and they come on stage and they're like super uncomfortable about being up there? Sometimes it's hard hearing positive about ourselves and negative. It can go both ways, right? So the truth hurts. Social pressure. So the worry of what others think of us can cause us to conform to society and fear of judgment. So really worrying about what other people think of you. What does this family think of me? Um, Social pressure can keep us from reaching self-awareness. Sorry, finding my place here. Okay. Past traumas. So again, we all have had lived experience if we're in this position. When we think of why we hurt, we're reminded of our past traumas. If we have not worked through our trauma, we may prevent ourselves from acknowledging our pain, emotion, and triggers. This is so important. You all have lived experience. It's important to do the work and work through those work through the past traumas and what you've been through. Acknowledge and know what your triggers are. There are certain conversations that you just are not able to have. It's important to be aware of those things. And you don't have to answer this, but on a scale from 1 to 10, I want you to think about how self-aware do you feel you are. If you would like to if you'd like to answer in the chat, you're more than welcome to, but just something to think about. On a scale from 1 to 10, how self-aware do you feel that you are? I'd like to talk about internal self-awareness. What is internal self-awareness? This is how we see ourselves, including our values, our wants, our needs, how we fit into our surroundings, and how our behaviors affect others and possible biases we may have. I think it's super important to know the biases you have, if you can work through some of those biases, um, what we want, how we fit into our surroundings. As an FPA, being internally self-aware allows us to see the consequences of our choices and actions, as well as prevent us from being caught off guard by emotional responses. We kind of talked earlier about buying someone a coffee, right? We bought someone a coffee just one time, but how could that choice lead to a consequence? That's important to know, right? Knowing what the consequences of our choices may be. Maybe this family is going to ask me for a coffee every visit, and I can't do that. So just being internally self-aware.
Ashley,
Yes.
um, there's some great responses in the chat. One person asked, what is a 1 and what is a 10? Like, if you can give some
Oh, yeah.
definitions of those.
So sorry, I wasn't even checking the chat.
But you're good. I gotcha.
Yeah, so one. So I am not self-aware. I just go around, I'm happy as can be. I don't know how my actions affect other people. 10 is I am so self-aware. I'm so conscious of how my actions affect others. I know what I want. I know what I need. I know how to get what I want, and I know how to get what I need. Does that make sense, hopefully? I see some pretty good numbers in here. That's really great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important to be self-aware. Thank you. Thank you for answering. I love seeing those high numbers.
And Erica said it's hard to answer. It's harder than she would think to answer that. And I think that that's true for a lot of this stuff because I don't think we think about it like this. We like have self-care sort of in our mind, like floating around. We know we should do it, but to actually like take a minute and think specifically about certain areas, you're
So,
allowed to change your answer.
how could self-awareness benefit our work? I'm going to share a little blip of my personal experience. I have a 6-year-old in a wheelchair. I discovered that I had previously had a bias about people in wheelchairs. I don't know about anybody else, but I was afraid to go and talk to them at a grocery store. I was so afraid, right? I don't know why. I don't know, maybe I thought they would think I'm judging them, or maybe I don't know. But I see that also now that I have a child in a wheelchair. I am so ashamed to think that I did have a bias, but I did. I was afraid to talk to people in wheelchairs. Um, Maybe it was because I don't know. I can't say why, but I was, and that's a bias I have. All right, not anymore, sorry. But it was a bias I did have that, I couldn't talk to someone in a wheelchair because, for whatever reason. It's important to acknowledge the biases we have, even though it's really hard. Um, because the families we work with, if we acknowledge our biases, we can kind of work through some of those and change those. I don't know if that's a good example or not. Sorry, but it was something I was thinking about. Does anyone have any other examples, maybe a better one of how biases or self-awareness, sorry, how self-awareness could benefit our work? What are your thoughts? Yeah, you can unmute and share if you want. You can put it in the comments. I'll give a minute in case anybody wants to answer.
For me, when I started this work, I had to really work on like my face. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
making sure that my face didn't show everything that I was thinking.
Mhm.
Um, and and even like those nonverbal reactions,
Mhm.
I had to really focus on those.
Yeah. Erica says we all have unconscious bias and implicit bias. She's absolutely right. I don't have the link right now, but if you go to Harvard, or you can even Google it, there's an implicit bias test on Harvard website. It's a really good one. It's really kind of eye-opening. Always be aware, right? Tamara says always be aware. Yeah. So I'm going to keep sharing my screen. Feel free to keep sharing um, how self-awareness could benefit a work if you'd like. And now let's talk about external self-awareness. How do others see you? This is an accurate understanding of how others see you and your actions. It involves recognizing how your behaviors, your culture, communication style, are and more are experienced by those around you. one of my teachers when I was in high school said, if you asked 100 people to describe you, you'd get 100 different answers, right? So there's how we react around different people can give them different opinions of us. But it's important to have an accurate understanding of how others see you and that other people might see you in different ways. So, as an FPA, being externally aware, self-aware, that allows us to be open to other perspectives. When we understand how a family perceives us, we can build a better relationship with them. And I want to kind of talk about that for a minute. So maybe um, families, you're having a hard time building trust with this family, right? And you can't figure out why. Maybe that family has had bad experiences with service providers and they see you as a threat. External self awareness, being aware that, hey, maybe this family sees me as a threat will help us in the long run, right? Because now we can show this family we're not a threat. We're here to help you. And we might even be different than other service providers. So understanding how this family sees us, maybe they're intimidated by you, or maybe this family sees you as an absolute expert, right? And they want you to make every decision for them. That's another way a family may see us. Those are important ways, it's important to understand how a family sees us. A lot of times, I've worked with families that said, I don't know, can you just decide? And, if they see us as the expert. I'm just reading some of the chats. I love that. I love that you guys are using the chat and talking. That's so great. So again, just to reiterate, just important to kind of think about how a family sees us. Again, I'm gonna do a self-reflection. This is for internal. You don't have to answer these questions, but I want you to just think about this and maybe reflect on it. Are you clear on who you are and what you want? Are you aware of your triggers, past trauma? Have you done the work towards healing? Have you worked through some of your own trauma? Maybe what you've been through? Are you able to stabilize yourself in a disruptive or triggering environment? Maybe maybe you're working with family and one of your triggers comes up. How do you handle yourself? Are you able to stabilize yourself? Are you able to bring calmness to yourself when something triggers you? Okay. Now let's think about external. Are you open to hear and validate different perspectives? So maybe a family, a coworker, maybe your supervisor has a different perspective than you. Are you open to listen to that? Tamara says, I'm good at those because she's been using a classic way and being transparent. That's good. Are you able to be your authentic self without worrying what others think of you? So maybe working with a family and just being yourself. You're able to have an opinion um, in a healthy way. Maybe it's the same as the families, maybe it's different. Are you able to build healthy relationships with others who have different thoughts, different beliefs, different ideas and perspectives? I think that's the first step to great communication and relationship building. Danny says it's not always necessary to give your opinion. Right. So maybe that family does have a different opinion than you. Are you able to hear it, accept that? Shakira says, I tend to excuse myself and take a quick walk to cool down. Yeah. I'll also call a colleague to help get some insight while I'm taking 5 minutes, and I come back with a new attitude as best I can. That's right. Okay. I love those answers. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So I want to talk about automatic empathy. So empathy is an automatic response. One moment. It's a reaction in our brain. It usually requires a little mental awareness. Empathy is an involuntary response. So let's say you're in a restaurant and you hear a baby crying. Your brain is probably going to have an automatic response. Maybe it's annoyance that a baby is crying, or maybe it's like, oh no, a baby is crying. You automatically have a thought about that, right? Another example, you walk into a family's home, they're upset, they're crying over a situation that is something maybe you've been through. You automatically feel empathy for them. When we see people crying, we tend to automatically feel empathy. Oh, what's wrong? That's an automatic response in your brain. Having empathy allows us to relate to the families we work with, but continuous exposure to trauma may cause vicarious trauma in FPAs. When we hear people's pain and we hear their trauma, it can cause us to relate and feel their pain. So having some of those boundaries we talked about is important. Having empathy is important in the FPA role, as it helps to foster positive relationships with the families we work with, right? It's important for us to separate our feelings from the family's feelings. So maybe an example would be, a family gets a test result back on their child and they're crying. So you automatically feel sad for that family. And that's our feelings. We feel sad because they're crying, but maybe they're crying because they're relieved, and that's a positive thing. So it's important to separate our feelings and making sure that we're not projecting our feelings onto the family, that we are not taking their feelings into our own. So it's important to be able to separate yourself enough from the family's feelings to protect your own mental health and well-being. So we're going to talk about next controlled empathy. It's a technique to protect one's emotional state. So controlled empathy, it requires us to constantly monitor our emotions and use the skills that we previously discussed, such as boundary setting and self-awareness. So when we start to feel empathy for a family, making sure we're keeping those boundaries, making sure we have self-awareness. We can regulate our empathy by sympathizing with someone, but setting limits on what we can give, determined by our boundaries, our energy, and our self-awareness. An example would be, I hear you, I care about you, and this is what I can give right now. Mental resilience. This is the ability to overcome and know the importance of not being engulfed by our experience. To be mentally resilient, you can bounce back from adversity and maintain your well-being. So mental resilience is the ability to overcome and know the importance of not being engulfed. So, families going through a lot right now, making sure that it doesn't take over our whole lives, that we're not carrying it with us as we walk through the door at home. To be mentally resilient, you can bounce back from adversity and maintain your well-being. So, you had a hard day at work. Maybe the families you're working with are going through a lot. Maybe they've had some really exciting things happen. It doesn't have to be bad. Maybe some really exciting things happen. That can be kind of exhausting too, especially if you work so long on a goal and they finally achieved it. And it's really exciting. As an FPA, we will have trials, and the families we work with have trials. So we want to make sure becoming mentally resilient. It allows us to acknowledge a setback or trial and have the knowledge on how to work through it. It is essential for FPAs to maintain their well-being for themselves, as for the longevity of our career. Making sure that we're mentally resilient, that we're working through what we see with families, so we can keep doing what we love. Somebody had said it before. Remember that it's not our problem, it's not our job to fix the family's problems. An FPA is a way to work through it, maybe um, stepping away from it and finding the family or resources help. I know somebody in the chat just said that they would walk away for 5 minutes and then come back, and that's great. Maybe you need to find additional support, and those are all good things, all ways to be mentally resilient. So lack of social support, stress, and viewing yourself as a failure can hinder being mentally resilient. So how do we do it? We want to be mentally resilient. That's a tongue tie for me today, apparently. And how do we get there? When you love what you do, exhaustion and being overwhelmed can sneak up on you. So again, we had talked about that we probably love what we're doing. You all have lived experience, so you had made the choice to help people. That's what you want to do. And sometimes we can overdo it, right? Because we love what we do. We love our jobs. We love being able to help people. But we can become overwhelmed and it can sneak up on us. Maybe you canceled a dinner with friends. Perhaps you came home and you snapped at a loved one for no reason. Or you came home from work and you just want to sleep, right? Um, Being exhausted from what we do, you need to monitor that and making sure that we're aware of that. If we start to feel tired, taking those days off. It's important to identify what your coping mechanisms are and use them. I've seen some really great ones in the chat. I've seen taking a walk, making sure we're using our lunch break. Christy mentioned going on vacation and leaving your phone behind. And here's some examples: taking a walk, reading a book, talking to a friend or a counselor. Using your coping mechanisms on a regular basis helps you to avoid becoming overwhelmed and exhausted. So making sure that we're doing them on an everyday basis, right? So that we don't have to wait until we're exhausted and overwhelmed and stressed out to then do them. Somebody said meditation, 5 minutes, deep breathing. Love that. Very good idea. Uh, So if you want to take a moment, think about or write down a few things you enjoy doing that help you with stress. You can do this after, when the webinar is over, or you can sit and like, if you have a piece of paper now, you can just write it down. But think about what you enjoy doing. How often are you doing what you enjoy? Are you taking time for yourself? Are you going for walks? Are you maybe going to the park, reading a book? Just take a moment to jot down the things you like doing and then think about how often do you do these things? Is it once a month? Is it once a week? Do you wait until you become very stressed and then you will do some self-care? Genevieve, I'm going to share, says, I work at residential, and sometimes if I start getting overwhelmed or upset, I'll go see some of the youth. It's fun, and also gives me a reminder. That's right. That's awesome. And self-care looks different for everybody. Um, so really finding out what works for you. So we talked about that we want to keep doing what we're doing. We want to help people for as long as we can. So creating occupational sustainability. So in order to maintain your drive when working with families, you need to understand the following: understanding your emotions, your triggers, and how to manage those. Prioritize your emotional and physical well-being, and promote collaboration. So passing things on to coworkers or other support staff when you have the ability to. Olafunk says, I love listening to music, getting my rest, reading, and I make sure I have time to do this. That's very good. Okay. So this is a wellness wheel. Maybe you have seen it before, and maybe you haven't. I will go over it though. So these are all the areas of wellness that we could focus on. So emotional health, being able to acknowledge feelings of sadness, anger, happiness, and joy in a productive manner. It's the ability to understand ourselves when we cope. So I want you to think about these as I'm reading. Do you have this type of wellness in your life? Social wellness, that's the ability to connect with other people around us and establish meaningful relationships. Intellectual wellness is the ability to be open to new ideas, the desire to learn new things and expand our knowledge and grow. So in that sense, remembering that families are the expert on their child. So just kind of listening to them, hearing their ideas, understanding where the family's coming from. Or maybe taking those opportunities at work to take a new class or come to things like this. Physical wellness is the ability to maintain a healthy lifestyle without stress or fatigue. Understanding our behaviors have an effect on our health and adopting a healthy lifestyle. Then we come to financial wellness. So having an understanding of your financial wellness, knowing your worth, and taking care of it in a way that you're prepared to. Spiritual wellness is the ability to create peace and harmony in your life, possibly understand that we all have a common purpose. And if you have, being able to follow your spiritual beliefs, taking the time for that. Occupational wellness is the ability to get personal fulfillment from our jobs. We all love what we do, and we can continue to love what we do by taking care of ourselves, our mental health, our physical health, so that we don't become stressed and overwhelmed. So this is creating balance from our jobs and our families, and being able to make a positive impact on society. And then last is environmental wellness, is the ability to make a positive impact on your environment. And then this is the end. So I just I thought this was really cute. If you look these up, there's a lot of these little cartoons with the brain and the heart. The brain says, "I'm exhausted." The heart says, "What's wrong, brain?" And brain says, I know you want me to do more. I'm sorry." And heart says, "It's okay. We all need a break sometimes." So making sure we are taking the breaks when we need them. I thought that was just so cute. And I'm going to leave this open for questions, comments. I'll stop sharing for a moment. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything they want to add to anything in here at all? Danny, I appreciate your comment. She says social is where I struggle. It's probably the most important to me. I don't have a big village and I really don't have friends. I've come to realize many of the friendships I had were fake and out of pity, which is why I'm grateful for trainings and opportunities to connect with fellow peers who may understand challenges as a parent. Yeah, and actually I got to meet Danny recently, which was super cool um, at our conference. Oh, spending time out in the woods is a favorite of self-care for me from Emily. I love that too. Um, any other thoughts, questions, comments? We Ocean views are great. Yes, I love the ocean. I'm going to share some this is one of the references I used. It's called The Empowered Empath. It's a book by Kristen Swartz. It had a lot of the information in here and it goes a lot deeper. It's a little more spiritual. It talks a lot more about energy, but it's really, really great. There was some good information in there. So I used a lot of that for our training today. If you want to write that down, I'll leave the screen up for a minute. I really enjoyed it. And I can put that in the chat if anyone does want it. We do have some upcoming events on May 20th from 12 to 1:30. We do have the Code of Ethics where we will be looking at the FPA Code of Ethics. We have an FPA Lived Experience Cafe. That's on June 3rd from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. That's for any FPA. That's an open space where you can talk to your peers, bring up any problems you may have, talk about things that are going well. That's 1 hour once a month. Just an open space to talk to your peers. On June 5th, from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m., we have FPA Recruitment Strategies. That's with Christy Ingram. And our next TA call will be FPAs supporting families experiencing childhood trauma. That's June 20th from 10 to 11:30 with our own TJ Curtis. And that is the end. I will again leave this open for any questions, any comments. I really appreciate everyone who came today. I loved all the comments. I just love the support I see in the chat. That's really great. I appreciate those who shared, and I really appreciate you guys being here. We couldn't have these without you being here. So I appreciate that, and we will hang around if you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like to add. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We hope to see you again. Hopefully, you can do some self-care. Oh, Michelle, she's going to take a lunch today. That's great. The book, let me grab it. I will write the book in the comment section. Uh,
Did you want something, Tamara?
the book is The Empowered Empath by Kristen Swartz. It's talking about empathy for those who are empaths and how to take care of ourselves. Oh, so the kids and I are going to have a Friday date night at dinner in a restaurant. That is so great. We are going tonight to see the Minecraft movie, so we'll see about that.
My son saw it. They said it was great. And
But
it's
then,
so interactive.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really care for it. I mean, it was interesting that you had Jack Black and Jason Momoa in there, but
Yeah.
to each his own.
Yeah.
Actually, hi guys. I was waiting to speak to Ashley, TJ, and if Ms. Williams is still on, perfect. If Ms. Williams know what this is about. So I'm part of PAC, and PAC is a parent advocacy council that works alongside ACS to bring awareness for parents with their rights. And we're throwing a parent day in Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. And for Parent Day, there's like a lot of organizations that's going to be there to table events, and we do giveaways, raffles. The organization speaks about, their purpose and things like that. And I was wondering if Families Together would love to be part of the tabling. It's at no cost for you guys, but we do have um, events in July on a Saturday. One is in Bronx, one is in Brooklyn, and one is in Queens.
I think we would have to just check that over with our director, right, TJ? I can put the credential email in, and I can give you my supervisor's email as well. If you want to send some information to her, Carrie Ann, is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, let me just type that in the chat for you. One moment. My Zoom screen disappeared, sorry.
It's all about communities and bringing, youths and families together. And it's really good. I was there last year, and we had a whole bunch of raffles, and one teenager won a scooter and was like
Oh,
really
wow.
excited about it. We had
That's
a whole bunch of giveaways, mostly makeups, because in the Bronx there's a lot of more females than males, so we had makeup giveaways, and the FDNY was there, housing was there, NYCHA, a lot of other organizations, so people could just be, speak to people in person and figure out what can they do and other resources for them.
That's awesome. I put the FPA credential email in, and anybody can use that. That goes to all the trainers. And the C Rollier one, that is our supervisor, the director of the family workforce development.